The collapse started long before Saturday night, long before the overtime loss, long before the cameras caught Aliyah Boston walking slowly toward the locker room while Indiana fans sat frozen inside Gainbridge Fieldhouse wondering how everything had unraveled so fast. By the time the broadcast confirmed she would not return because of a lower leg injury, the real damage had already been done months earlier behind closed doors in front office meetings where the Indiana Fever convinced themselves they could build a contender without properly protecting the most valuable investment in franchise history. And now the entire league is watching the consequences unfold in real time. Saturday night should have belonged to Caitlin Clark. She delivered the kind of performance that usually changes the outcome of games by herself. 32 points, 7 threes, 8 assists. Another fourth-quarter takeover that reminded everyone why she became the face of modern women's basketball before even finishing her rookie season. Every time Washington tried to create separation, Clark dragged Indiana back into the fight. Every dagger shot felt like a statement. Every possession carried the weight of expectation. But basketball eventually exposes weaknesses no superstar can hide forever. Indiana got demolished. Inside, the Fever were outscored by 30 points in the paint by a Washington roster built mostly around rookies and second-year players. That statistic alone sounded impossible for a team supposedly trying to compete for a championship. Once Boston disappeared into the locker room, the game stopped feeling like a basketball contest and started looking like survival. Washington attacked the rim possession after possession because Indiana had no answer waiting behind its franchise center. No defensive anchor. No reliable backup. No physical presence capable of slowing the bleeding. Just exhaustion, undersized rotations, and panic disguised as effort. That was the moment the entire offseason came crashing back into focus because the Fever didn't accidentally arrive here. They built this vulnerability themselves. When Indiana handed Boston the largest contract in WNBA history, the move was supposed to symbolize a new era. For years, $6.3 million, a massive commitment to one of the league's brightest young stars. But the structure of that contract revealed something important. Indiana intentionally kept her first-year salary slightly below the maximum so the front office would have enough flexibility to build depth around her. The message was clear. They weren't just paying a star. They were building a contender around her. Then they failed to do it. Instead of strengthening the front court, Indiana spent the offseason collecting guards, more ball handlers, more perimeter depth, more wings. Meanwhile, the one thing the roster desperately needed kept getting ignored. A real backup center. A defensive enforcer. Somebody capable of protecting Boston from carrying the entire interior by herself for another exhausting season. That absence now hangs over the franchise like a storm cloud. The worst part for Fever fans is watching former players thrive elsewhere, while Indiana looks dangerously thin. Natasha Howard exploded for 26 points against Dallas from Minnesota, dominating the second half like a player reborn. Fever fans remember exactly what Howard brought to Indiana last season: toughness, versatility, leadership, physical defense. The kind of frontcourt presence this current roster desperately lacks. But Indiana let her walk away in October, and they never truly replaced her. Then came the even more painful reminder from Odyssey Sims, another former Fever player, another veteran allowed to leave. She torched Indiana for 20 points earlier this season, like someone personally delivering a reminder of the franchise's mistakes. These are not isolated roster decisions anymore. They are receipts, evidence of a front office that gambled on being top-heavy while ignoring the brutal reality of a long WNBA season. And now those decisions are threatening the health of the very stars they invested millions into protecting. That is the contradiction haunting Indiana right now. The Fever are spending superstar money without building superstar infrastructure. They committed enormous resources to Boston, Clark, and Kelsey Mitchell, but refused to build the depth required to survive when adversity inevitably arrived. Mitchell's Supermax deal consumed a massive chunk of the cap because Indiana believes she is essential to competing. Boston became the centerpiece of the franchise's future. Clark became the face of the league itself. But around them sits a roster held together by minimum contracts, inexperienced rookies, and thin rotations that look increasingly dangerous every single night. Even Sophie Cunningham has been thrown into heavy minutes while still recovering from a torn MCL. 20 minutes on a recovering knee this early in the season says everything about Indiana's desperation already. The season barely started, yet the Fever already look overextended physically. And looming over all of this is Herb Simon. At 91 years old, Simon remains one of the most influential owners in basketball history. Hall of Fame recognition, decades of service, massive influence across both the NBA and WNBA. Last year, Indiana proudly announced plans for a stunning $78 million Fever training facility set to open before the 2027 season. The renderings looked incredible. State-of-the-art everything. A powerful statement about the future of women's basketball in Indianapolis. But buildings don't protect rebounds. Buildings don't defend the paint. Buildings don't come off the bench when Boston limps to the locker room. That is the growing frustration surrounding the Fever right now. Fans are being sold a vision of the future, while the present roster feels dangerously incomplete. The organization talks about commitment, investment, and growth. But when the moment arrived to protect their most valuable players with serious front-court depth, Indiana chose financial flexibility instead. Now Wednesday is approaching fast. The Portland Fire enter Gainbridge as an expansion franchise filled with young players and reclamation projects. On paper, this should be a comfortable Indiana win. If Boston were fully healthy and available for her normal workload, the Fever probably control the game from start to finish. But nothing feels stable anymore. Nobody knows how healthy Boston really is. Nobody knows how many minutes she can safely handle. And nobody knows what happens if Indiana's already fragile frontcourt suffers one more setback. That uncertainty changes everything, because underneath this entire situation sits a much larger question the Fever cannot escape. If Indiana struggles this badly to protect Aliyah Boston after giving her the largest contract in league history, what message does that send to Caitlin Clark about her own future? Clark's eventual Supermax negotiations are already looming over the league. At some point, Indiana will ask the biggest star in women's basketball to commit the prime years of her career to this organization. They will ask her to trust their vision, trust their leadership, trust their ability to build a championship roster around her. And right now, that trust suddenly looks fragile. Saturday night wasn't just another regular season loss. It felt like the exposure of a deeper organizational problem. A superstar guard carrying impossible pressure. A franchise center breaking down physically without proper support. Former players thriving elsewhere. Ownership staying silent while fans grow louder by the day. The Fever are still talented enough to win games, but talent alone doesn't survive long seasons. Depth does. Protection does. Smart roster construction does. Indiana ignored those warnings for months. Now the bill is arriving all at once, and before Wednesday's tip-off. Fever fans are left asking the same question nobody inside the organization seems willing to answer. If this franchise truly wants to compete for championships around Caitlin Clark and Aliyah Boston, why does the roster still look unfinished when the stakes have never been higher? If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like and subscribe for more deep dive coverage on the biggest stories in basketball. And let me know in the comments, what should the Indiana Fever do before Wednesday night? Should they aggressively pursue frontcourt help immediately, or is this roster all ready to fly to seriously contend this season?